and start or continue. Let's go ahead and continue our study of histology. And when we're studying this, we know that histology is the study of tissues, right? What were those 4 major tissue classes? Epithelial, nervous, connective, and muscular. So muscle. So we're going to look at. Have we finished muscle? Well, we did a little bit, didn't we? Of the muscle. Have we even finished? We passed the muscle.
Yeah.
We passed the muscle. Okay.
We were on tissue
All right.
growth and finished on tissue development.
I have a couple people who couldn't make it today, so I was emailing them. Here's what I want you guys to know. So next Tuesday, we're going to have a comprehensive lecture quiz. So anything that we talked about in the histology chapter, right? Anything. So at the beginning of your histology notes and through finishing this chapter will be on a lecture quiz on Tuesday, okay? And then you have a test next Thursday. Next Thursday will be a test on chapters 4, 5, and 6. Well, 6 is skin. We'll get to start skin today, and we will finish it up on Tuesday. But here's your goal as far as time management goes. Time management goes this way for you to be successful in this class. On Tuesday, you could take I'm not going to give it to you, but you could take a comprehensive test on chapters 4 and 5 and do well. Because you're going to be finishing up some information on skin, and you're going to want to use from Tuesday to Thursday to study that, right? You get what I mean? So by Tuesday, you guys should be able to teach chapters 4 and 5. And I say that sort of tongue-in-cheek, but I understand it. Nobody's going to make you do that. But is that the way we learn? When we're studying, we're thinking about how would we teach this? If I know it well enough to teach it, I'm pretty good. That's how you have to study. I figured it out when I was a junior in college, that, oh my God, the way I studied before didn't work anymore. What was I supposed to be doing? And it took me a while. It took me a semester or so. And I thought, it dawned on me. If I can study material, going at that material with the idea in mind that I'm going to have to get up and teach it to my peers, I own it after that. I own it. No matter which way it's brought to. No matter who's writing questions, I'm going to do pretty well because that's the way I've studied it. So anyway, so that's your time management from this point. Because a week from today, you have another test. You have your second test. If anybody is doing like they do in most classes, where you're studying right before you go in, it's not going to work for you. It isn't. Okay. So okay. All right. So here we go. We said we had talked about muscles. So that was our last category. What 3 types of muscle do we have? Absolutely. We have skeletal, which is called that because it's what? It's attached to bone, a muscle that's attached to 2 different bones. And by the way, let's go ahead and put this in our notes with the skeletal muscle. We said it's under voluntary control, right? You control your movements. You control this, or at least you should in a normal situation. Let's see if this doesn't make sense. If skeletal muscle is attached to bone, it would certainly need to be attached to 2 different bones. So when the skeletal muscle fiber contracts, one bone will be acted on to move. Does that make sense? I want you all to know, and you will be asked this, that the bone of origin, it's called the bone of origin, is the bone that won't move when the muscle contracts. It won't move. The bone of insertion is the bone that will be acted upon. Everybody got that? You wrote in shorthand. Nobody's reading that right now. Okay, you write it. Okay, so by the way, when you go on and if anybody goes into orthopedics, which is a field where it's all about muscles, bone, joints, movement. If you take a kinesiology course, which is the study of movement, you will learn for every muscle. And by the way, you're going to learn bones in here and you're going to learn muscles. But I'm not going to have you for every muscle know the bone of origin, the bone of insertion, the action that happens, not going to, and the nerve that innervates it. We don't have that kind of time in here, but you understand that that's the next step, right? And so you're learning what you learned from me, so that if you ever go into a specialty like orthopedics or, you know, orthopedic design, you know, where you're doing prosthetics or stuff, that's what you would need to do at the next level. You would be learning all of that, right? So skeletal muscle is attached to bone, and the function is movement, isn't it? And it's under voluntary control. And we said the heart, I'm remembering now, the heart, I told you that the heart is, Megan, you laughing at me, Megan, about that? Okay, Megan. All right, it's okay. It's okay to help me too. If you ever see me struggling up here, to give me some help. So anyway, but I remember we talked about the heart, and we said that the heart is autorhythmic. It has its own built-in pacemaker. What was that called? And are you going to need to know that? Yes, you do. It's autorhythmic. We don't have to think about our heartbeat. Now, of course, a lot of other things influence heart rate. We're going to talk about those as we talk about A&P in our studies. But absolutely. And then we said that smooth muscle, its function is to do what? I gave you a function. What is it to do? Exactly. To control volume inside of organs. What's inside of those organs? The volume, right? So absolutely. So we said smooth muscle is surrounding body organ, oftentimes body organ structures like the GI tract, the 30-foot tract, but also the urinary tract, the ureters, the bladder, the it's surrounding vessels and body organs, and it controls volume. Okay. I talked about sphincters. What's a sphincter? And again, it's going to help to control the volume, but it's a round muscle, isn't it? So it's I want y'all to write down the word, because there are a lot of students who I say this and then they don't stop me and don't bother to look it up, and then they don't know. It's orifice. An orifice is an opening. An opening. That's what that means, no matter where you see that word, an orifice. So a urethral orifice is what? It's the opening of the end of the terminal end of the urethra, right? And how about a vaginal orifice? How about an orifice? Right? So we got orifices. They're just openings. Many of them have, not all of them, but many of them have sphincters that are going to be there, that are going to control what moves past that, right? Okay, so whatever. So you had that. Any questions for me? So we had talked about endocrine and exocrine, hadn't we? We almost finished this.
Yes.
Did we finish it?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, we stopped at 6 months. The last thing we talked about was adults.
Oh, okay. And tissue. We had some definitions for like metaplasia, didn't we? And like hypertrophy. Didn't we have hypertrophy? Yes. We did. And neoplasm is going to be development of a tumor. So we had some terminology, didn't we? And why are we learning terminology as we go? Because are there any such things as big words? No, they're just words that you have prefixes, and once you learn those prefixes, they mean the same thing no matter where you see them. And same thing with suffixes and whatever. So there's no such thing as big words. They're just words that we need to know, prefixes, suffixes, and root words. And if we learn them as we go, it's going to really make things easier. It's why people, when they get to master's levels and their degrees, it's easier. Master's degrees are easy because you're in your field. You've been hearing that language for a long time, many classes, and they're just much easier classes, right? Because you're kind of there. And that's going to happen with you guys too. You're going to see even in this course that it just gets easier and easier. Okay, it does. Okay. If you're trusting me and building your knowledge and not getting behind and not having to play catch up, that's going to be the case. So we said stem cells are early cells, aren't they? They're early. They have the potential to become anything, don't they? And when they have started to differentiate, what does that mean that they're really doing? What's another word for that?
specialized.
They become specialized. They're maturing, aren't they? And they're becoming specialized. And that's exactly right. So I think we kind of stopped right here, didn't we? So in tissue repair, there's a couple of things that I want you to know. You know, obviously we live in a hostile environment, a hostile world. You know, we fall down steps and we, I don't know, suffer tornadoes, and we do things that can injure our tissues. And that's okay, because most, not all, but most tissues that we just talked about, those 4 classes, most of those tissues have the potential to repair. Now, do you think they all repair exactly alike? No, they do not. No, they do not. And they don't, some of them actually can't really repair. Let me tell you about in the muscle category. Skeletal muscle, as long as it hasn't been devastated, can typically repair. You know, as long as it hasn't been a traumatic crush injury or just a macerated mess, it can repair. But can cardiac muscle repair? No. No, it cannot. In the epithelial tissues, we can usually, as long, you know, I told you epithelial tissue lines and secretes. And I said that cells are really close together. If you ever see cells that are just lined up, close together, or stacked up, it's epithelial. That's epithelial tissue. You're going to look at it today in lab. But and I told you that tissue is avascular. The blood supply is coming from beneath the basement membrane area. Now, what happens is that if that tissue gets injured, as long as the margin of the injury isn't so great, you can usually get regeneration. That's why sometimes you've injured yourself and didn't even get a scar, did you? But if the margin was too large, then what's going to happen? It's going to be like a little scar. I have burn scars all over me. That means I should stay out of the kitchen. So, but anyway, for more reasons than one, I should stay out of the kitchen. So anyway, but right, if the margin is too great, then it's going to end up scarring. So I want you to know 2 words when we're thinking about tissue repair. Common sense tells us that not all tissues can repair at the same rate or can even repair. We understand that. That's why we kind of want to know these different tissue categories. But I want you to know 2 words, and they are regeneration and fibrosis. What does regeneration suggest to you? It can repair. And when regeneration happens, it can repair and you can potentially get back full function. So that's what we like to hear, right? That's what we would like to hear is going on. You guys, let me talk to you. I just told you about 2 examples within the muscle system tissues. How about within the nervous system? You guys have heard of peripheral nerves, which means the nerves coming off the spinal cord of the brain. And then you've heard of the spinal cord in the brain, central nervous system, right? So this is just FYI for you at this point. If a peripheral nerve gets injured, either through trauma or through surgery, which is trauma, surgery is trauma, or through disease, peripheral nerves can sometimes repair. It can maybe take up to a year. Usually if they have not regenerated within a year, it's probably not happening. You know what I mean? But they can. They're very slow at doing it, but they can. Do we think of regeneration when there's been spinal cord or brain injury? No, we don't. We don't. All right. That reminds me, I have a son who was in ICU yesterday working. And one of the patients, was a younger man who had a traumatic spinal cord injury, a recent spinal cord injury, but they were really hoping, he was paralyzed at that time, but they were really hoping that he's going to get the function back. Right now he's paralyzed though, and it looks like he's lost function because initially when an injury happens, does the body respond? The body responds by bringing more cells to the site and trying to get things to the site that can reduce the chance of infection, but also bringing blood to the site for repair. But that swelling that can happen in a spinal cord injury can actually cause damage. So they were really doing a ton of stuff to actually suppress his immune response. Because right now, with the swelling, it is appearing that he is paralyzed. But as soon as they're hoping that he's not. Does that make sense? Now, if he is, after all of that goes down and he's paralyzed, is it likely he's going to get anything back? No. So anyway, the next thing I want you to know is fibrosis. If you hear about fibrosis, it means there's going to be scarring. And scarring means that you're not going to get regeneration at that site. You're not going to get the same function at that site. You know, I got this little tiny burn scar right here. Do we all have scars? Is there anybody in here who's not scarred? You don't think you have any scars? I was going to say, if you haven't been scarred, you don't have any siblings. What? So, no. But most of us have a scar somehow. We have scars somewhere. But anyway, I want to bring to your attention this fibrosis. Like, nobody cares about these little scars on your knees, and nobody. Those scars. That's not really. You did lose function at that site. That's fibrosis, and you did. But where you really worry about are internal fibrotic events, like when people have surgeries. When you have a surgery and somebody's opened up your tissues, do you get scarring on the inside? Yes. Yeah, and once a scar forms, does it always stop right when it needs to, or can it continue? So then you can get these fibrotic things, and when I'm saying fibrotic, it's just another way of saying fibrosis. It's just using the word differently in the city. But a fibrotic event that can cause adhesions, and could that interrupt the way that your organs are working? Should be working, blood flow to the organs, how they are moving products, so wherever the scar is. So that can be a problem. But let's think about the skin. The skin, like nobody cares about little scars on the skin, but suppose there's been a real, burns, and you've lost huge margins of skins. And now there's fibrotic tissue covering those. Can you lose all of the supporting structures underneath, like the sweat glands and the oil glands, and how the blood vessels are actually working? Yeah, so then now you're talking about some serious problems, right? So anyway, we don't want to hear about fibrosis. It does happen, but you certainly need to understand if fibrosis has occurred, you've lost function there. Now, what happens in fibrosis, the event that's happening, is the injury happens. So you're going to have bleeding, is that right? Usually there's going to be bleeding. There's trauma to those tissues. And with that bleeding, new stem cells will come into the site. And I do want you to know that those stem cells are actually called fibroblasts. Fibroblasts. So you see the bleeding and that's tissue repair. These little pictures are kind of cool, so y'all can see. So anyway, fibroblasts are coming, and that's not always a bad thing. Fibroblasts are coming, but these fibroblasts are, if you ever hear the word blast, here it is right here, fibroblast. I know you might be able to see it from the back. But if you ever hear the term blast, what does that mean? An early cell. So fibroblasts become fibrocytes. Cyte, C-Y-T-E, fibrocyte is a mature fiber cell, and they become collagen, they become elastin. That sounds like good stuff, right? And that is good stuff. But if too many of them are coming in and laying down, and then the other cell types can't come in and that need to, like epithelial or whatever, then this ends up causing a scar. And this is kind of why scarring is called fibrosis. It's a fibrotic event, right? Because you're in and out getting things that are good, they're strong, collagen, elastin, these fibroblasts are coming in and laying down. But if there's too much of that happening, then you can't get, like maybe the epithelial, but you need that. You get what I'm saying? Okay, so that is what is happening there. Now, I want to give you the term keloid. 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 And, you know, I don't like to stand up here and spell, so if I'm doing it, use it. So anyway, but keloiding is the process of abnormal scarring. There's got to be some people in here with keloids because it's that common. Keloiding is very common. I just watched the Black Panther this weekend. It was so good. It was so good. I'm going to go see it again. I'm going to get it again. Where's my box? I'm going to get it again. But it was it awesome? Do you, in this, have some people seen it? Okay, so some haven't. But it's an awesome movie. I would recommend it. But in this movie, maybe you've seen the previews, there is this tribe that has very, very distinguished keloiding that they've done to, right? Really looks good, actually. Yeah, you know, whatever. But anyway, a keloid is going to be a scar that, you know, like this scar is with you. If you were blind or it was in the dark, you wouldn't be able to feel the scar. But because it's in the margin of where it should be. But if you have a keloid, it's continuing to scar and it's raised beyond the margin. So that's what a keloid is. And some of them can be really raised above the margin. So some people have gotten their ears pierced, and instead of, you know, the piercing healing over and whatever, they will get a keloid. And sometimes those keloids can be the size of, like, you know, grapes. Sometimes they can be the size of walnuts. You know, so any little injury can, in that particular person can keloid. Some people are more prone to keloiding than other people. It's a familial inherited thing. And usually darker toned people are more prone to keloiding, but I've seen plenty of keloids in white people too. So, you know, but it does seem it's a lot more frequent in darker toned people that they are able to keloid. That makes perfect sense to me, and I've never seen this documented anywhere, but it makes perfect sense to me that darker toned people are more prone to keloiding because it seems like people with darker toned skin, they have beautiful skin. Let's just face it. It's beautiful skin. It is, and it's very strong. It's like there's a lot of collagen and elastin in the skin. And so because there's so much collagen and elastin in the skin, then when they do injure, there's a lot of that coming to the site. And if there's too much of that coming to the site, what are they going to do? They're going to scar. And if they don't scar just at the margin, it's going to be called a what? A keloid. Yeah. So does that make sense to y'all? That's why darker toned people more often, but I do know some very light skinned people who have keloids as well. Any questions for me? What's the problem with a keloid? The problem with a keloid might be, I mean, it's not a problem if it's just aesthetic. That's not considered a problem. You know, if somebody has a keloid where they try to get earrings or a belly button ring, or, you know, whatever, that's just aesthetic. But the problem with keloiding is when the keloid is so large internally, you know, it's happening internally, and it can actually impair blood flow. It can impair, you know, then it becomes a problem, right? Not a problem on the Black Panther, let me just tell you. So, okay. Y'all should see that movie. Okay, I'm moving on. What'd you say? Well, it's a great question. Thank you for bringing that up, Kelly, because if it gets removed, what do you have to do to remove it? You have to injure tissue. You have to cut the tissue to remove it. And if the person's prone to keloiding, guess what's going to happen when you cut their tissue to remove that keloid? Another one will happen. Except that because they know usually, so what they'll usually do is if the keloid, when they remove a keloid that might be for aesthetic reasons, they're removing it or whatever, they know that person's immune response is doing that. So what they'll usually do is inject with steroids that actually suppress their immune system there, and hopefully will kind of, it won't keloid as bad, you know. And sometimes they can prevent it from keloids at all with the proper treatment. Does anybody in here have a keloid they'd like to share that's not in the region where the sun doesn't shine? Nobody has a keloid. There's got to be somebody in here with a keloid. Nobody's got a keloid in here. Okay, then. All right. Keep it to yourself. So it's okay. All right. I want you to know the term atrophy versus, y'all are good? I want you to know the term atrophy versus necrosis. Atrophy versus necrosis. Atrophy, they're very different. So make sure you know the difference. Atrophy means that you had a shrinkage of the tissue, or cell size, and it can be numbered. So it's just shrinking. It's not working like it was, not getting what it needs, not doing what it should be doing, because cells are factories, aren't they? Is that right? So you can have senile atrophy, which is normal. And I don't mean senile in the word now that we're thinking that. This is just an aging, a natural, normal aging kind of process. Or you can have disuse. Y'all have probably seen people who've had cast on, and when they take the cast off of the injured appendage, it looks like that appendage has shrunk, right? Now, that doesn't happen as often as it used to, because in orthopedics, they have cut in half casting time over the last decade. They realized they were doing damage to tissues by keeping them in cast too long. They didn't need them that long. But you've seen that happen. Necrosis is very different. This is pathological cell death and tissue death. And it's going to be either due to trauma, toxins, infections. So necrosis means you've got tissues dying, and they should not be dying, right? So this is not a good thing ever to hear. Sometimes necrosis is caused from infarctions, and I want you to know this word, infarction. Infarction means there's been a sudden loss of blood supply. If we don't have blood bringing nutrients and gases to our tissues, will they die? Yes. Yes. So a sudden death to the tissue because of a lack of blood supply. You guys have all heard of myocardial infarctions. What does that mean? That's the real term for a heart attack. Myocardial infarction is a heart attack. And there's nothing good about that, hearing that somebody's had an MI. But you can have infarctions in the brain, and you can have infarctions in other areas. It means there's been a sudden loss of blood supply, and the cells that were needing that blood supply die. Now, gangrene means that the tissues are infected, and usually we're referring to gas gangrene, which is going to be because of a bacterium. And I want you all to know the name of that bacterium, and this is one of the things that I will definitely spell for you, just because I do think that some of you might not hear what I say well enough to even look it up. But anyway, Clostridium is the genus, perfringens is the species, perfringens is the species name. This is the name, the formal name of this bacterium. It's called Clostridium perfringens. This is a bacterium, and I do want you to know it's a bacterium. It's everywhere in our environment, including in our colons. So is there any way to just get rid of this in the environment? No, absolutely not. Clostridium perfringens, though, you can't get rid of it in the environment, but it's everywhere. But the good news is that oxygen is toxic to it. Oxygen is toxic to that bacterium. So as long as there's good blood supply to tissues, would tissues ever have gangrene? But what happens when blood flow starts to slow down to the tissues? What starts to decrease in those tissues? Oxygen. And if those tissues start to lose oxygen, the tissues will start to die, and there's no oxygen there. So what can just set up house and start eating your tissues? Clostridium perfringens, and that's called gas gangrene. What's the cure for that? Well, you can give oxygen, but what's the cure for those dead tissues? Amputation. And let me say this to you guys, and see if this doesn't make sense. Can you amputate just the dead tissue? No. Because if you amputate just the dead tissue and left any margin of dead tissue, what's still there? Clostridium in the dead tissue, right? So you have to amputate up into the living tissue. You've got to, right? So that is right. Okay. Yes, Kelly. So the spelling, you want the spelling? If you can read my writing, Clostridium. I spelled that wrong. Who was like paying attention to who? Megan, you were supposed to help me this morning. No, I'm just kidding. Clostridium perfringens. R-I-D-I-U-M. Clostridium perfringens. Clostridium perfringens. That's a big job, Megan. Clostridium perfringens. Hey guys, somebody just asked a really good question that I needed to address. What'd you say? Oh, so can it do anything to the living tissue? It's in the dead tissue, but can absolutely. And the reason the dead tissue, another reason that the dead tissue has to die is because it's not going to die, right? But that bacteria is eating that dead tissue. And if it gets to your bloodstream, if it can get to the living tissue and in the bloodstream, you have, with the best medical care, about a 50-50 chance of making it. Because if it gets to your bloodstream, you probably just want to tell everybody goodbye. So that's why they've got to amputate as soon as possible. You've got to get that tissue out, and they've got to watch for what's called sepsis. You all need to write down that word sepsis. S-E-P-S-I-S. S-E-P-S-I-S. Sepsis means that you have an actively growing infection in your bloodstream. An actively growing infection in your bloodstream. Now you want to hear this. With the best medical care, I mean the best medical care available, 1 in 4 will die. That's the average. 1 in 4 will die with sepsis. If it's from something like this bacterium, it's going to be higher than that. But I mean, with any other bacteriums, there's an average with the best medical care. And it doesn't matter if you're old or young or in the prime of your life, you don't have a good chance of making it if you have sepsis. If you are, I've heard people say, oh, I was septic with so-and-so, and they were never put in the hospital. They were not. If you have true sepsis, you're in a hospital, you're on IV antibiotics, they may be sending those antibiotics through your bone marrow. They may have stuck it a big gauge needle into your bone marrow. This is a serious thing, right? So sepsis is actively growing microorganisms in the bloodstream. Some of them have higher mortality rates than others, but none of them are good news, because with the best medical care, there's still going to be a high mortality rate. With no medical care, it's almost 100%. With no medical care, if it's truly sepsis, if it is truly sepsis. Okay, so guys, the bacterium that causes gangrene, Clostridium perfringens, right? Guys, I want you to know about decubitus ulcers. You call those bed sores, right? But this is the real name, a decubitus ulcer. A decubitus ulcer is a bed sore. Bed sores are caused, what are they caused from? Pressure. What? Yeah, it's probably the same. So it's pressure that's on tissues. So the pressure's enough that the blood supply can't get there. The vessels have become so fragile, and the blood supply can't get there, so the tissues die. Okay. Are bed sores preventable? Yes. What? Yes. How do you prevent a bed sore? And now, how many of you have seen those new beds? Those beds that are doing the different pressure. So the pressures change. It's not a but anyway, pressures change, and then you turn the patients. Look, so it's really nice that all of you all said yes, but not all bed sores are preventable. They're not all preventable. They're not. I don't care with the best beds or the best care of somebody turning. How many of you all have worked with patients whose skin, you can't put a tourniquet on it, you can't even put a blood tourniquet on the skin. I've had to hold with one hand pressure while trying to manipulate the finest butterfly in somebody's, I remember their feet and also this little vein, but their skin is so fragile that it is like crepe paper times 1,000, right? So no, guys. And there's some people who have absolutely no healing power because they have their albumin levels, their livers are not really functioning, whatever. I don't care what I don't care what kind of bed you have or what kind of care you have. You can't prevent pressure sores on everybody. Now, can most be prevented? Yes, most can be prevented with the proper care, but not all of them. They really cannot. But I'm glad y'all think that, because that actually is okay. Guys, another term for you. We have phagocytosis, don't we? The process of cells eating. But here's another term for you. It's called apoptosis. Apoptosis is programmed cell death. And this is normal to happen. Apoptosis is normal to happen, and it needs to happen, because if it doesn't happen in some areas, what happens? Then they are not getting out of the way. The cells aren't getting out of the way, and they need to be getting out of the way. You guys have seen apoptosis in action, because y'all have seen those developing embryos. And you see developing embryos, and at first they look like they have these little pads for fingers and feet and whatever. And then what starts to happen? Cells start to die, right? And you end up getting fingers that are developing, and that's supposed to. And that's just normal embryonic apoptosis. But apoptosis is normal, really, programmed cell death, and so that's okay. So the only other thing I want to talk to you about in this chapter, do we sometimes have to get skin grafts? Do we have to sometimes get skin grafts? Yes, we do. And when skin, it's not talking about those much, but okay. So when skin grafts are happening, there's lots of techniques that we're using now to try to make skin patches for skin grafts. Has anybody ever known anybody with serious burns or serious loss of tissue that you had?
A resident of mine.
What'd you say?
A resident.
A resident
Burn all the way to the bone.
Yeah. So, I just feel like that's the hardest thing. The hardest unit is a burn unit, is an intensive burn unit section. For a person who's dealt with that kind of injury, it's really, really tough. There are a lot of different things they can do. They can do autografts, where they take from the person's another area, a healthy area of the person's body, and try to do a grafting that would take, and that means that that person's immune system shouldn't fight their own tissues, right? The immune system shouldn't respond. But then you've got this person who's been greatly insulted, and you're insulting another area. Do you know what I mean? And so I just feel like, oh my goodness. But they can also do tissue. They can actually get tissue keratinocyte patches growing, but you have to have time for that, right? And so this is where genetic engineering has actually been amazing. I know there's some controversy, and this isn't an ethics class or whatever, but through stem cell research and genetic engineering, we are now able to make and create keratinocyte patches, keratinocytes or skin cells, make patches that are the person's own, and then they can be grafted into without having to do autografts or having to do grafts from like cadavers in or whatever. Because it's really hard for those people to have lost not just the function at that site, but just there's so many reasons it's hard. The pain, because our pain receptors is pain a good thing or a bad thing? Pain is a good thing. It lets us know. It lets us know when something might be wrong, so we address it if we have pain. And so, pain is actually a really good thing to have. Now, obviously, we don't want to be in pain, but it actually is really a good thing. The thing about pain receptors that we know though, is that there are a tremendous number of them superficially, sort of ending those specialized neurons ending superficially. So burns are incredibly painful, or abrasion. It doesn't have to be just burns. It can be abrasion, injury, or whatever. Really tough. Really tough. But anyway, all right. So how do you feel about all of that? You feel okay? So let's take, since we're going to move to chapter 6 and skin, and y'all can say hallelujah, because we're starting organs, right? We're starting organs, yay. let's take a 10-minute break and we'll come back and start the skin. Okay? Okay, guys, so we are back. And we are about to start the skin chapter, which is our organ systems. We're now going to be going into organ systems, which we know are composed of 2 or more of these tissue types. Most of them have all of them. But anyway, let me tell you guys about this in the lab. Today in lab, we're going to be doing histology. I'm always so impressed with you all with this histology lab, because we will be looking at the 4 tissue types. We will be looking at very specific types of epithelial too, actually, and 3 of the connective tissues. And we'll look at all 3 of the muscle types, and we'll look at motor neurons. But anyway, so we'll look at those slides today, and I really don't want you all to leave lab until you feel pretty comfortable about those slides. This is one of those days where I'd like for at least some people to have their books, if you have your books with you, because the slides that you are assigned in lab, they will be the only ones of the tissue types that I would like you to recognize if you saw them under scope, okay? So I'm going to have them listed on the board, and you'll know exactly which ones from the pictures in your book that you're going to be responsible for lab. That lab will also be probably next Thursday, okay? But that lab is really just going to be you looking at pictures and recognizing tissue types, right? Will they be any different ones than we look in lab today, or that I tell you about in your book today? No. So you will also, on Tuesday, if you would like just another time to look at those slides, you can look at those few slides again. But we'll also be looking at the skin and labeling the skin on Tuesday. That lab won't be until the next week. Fair enough? So just again as a reminder, Tuesday you should be prepared to take a lecture quiz that's comprehensive from histology chapter. On Thursday, you should be prepared for a multiple choice test on chapters 4, genetics, 5, histology, and skin. Let me bring to your attention, and maybe Nicole will do this for me since I see her book right there. Nicole, in chapter 6, at the end of the chapter 6, there is a disorders table. We are starting the organ system. So at the end of the chapters now of each of the organ systems, there will be, so there will be, at the end of each of these organ systems, I'll give this back to you, but just so you guys can see it, there will be a table that says, and so, they're often listed like this, some disorders of the integumentary system. So you see this table like that? Now look, as we're going through this chapter, I'm going to have mostly talked about most of these disorders. So you're going to have heard it from me. But even if I haven't, will you be responsible on the multiple choice test? Will you be responsible for knowing a little bit about each of these? You will. Even what's down here in the blue that you're going to maybe have to look up in the index, but even those. But again, most of these I will have discussed, okay, in class. So now that these organ system chapters are starting, you know that for any test we have 2 things outside of lecture that you need to be looking at. You need to be looking at the deeper insights, and you need to be now looking at the what? And do you know where they're found? Exactly. Any questions? No? Great. You all also know that your final exam is just going to be questions from here, these disorder tables and the insights. So some of you, I think, have started keeping those notes kind of separate, because you know that when we finish this course and you finish your final test in here, you usually have a couple of days or so, and then you have the exam, that all you need are these notes, right? Okay. That's just be more than that. But okay, great. I wanted to make those announcements. So everybody kind of knows what's coming up next week?
So
everybody
next Thursday is the lab from today, the lab quiz.
Next Thursday is going to be a multiple choice test on chapters 4 through 6. And after we finish that, there will also be a lab on histology, which is that you recognize those tissue types that we do today in lab.
Okay.
And you will have another Tuesday, you can look at them again if you want to.
Okay.
But I'm always really impressed because that's one of the highest lab grades. And I'm really kind of surprised and happy about that, because students at first are nervous when they hear that they're going to have to become little histologists. But then after they get in there and start looking at these tissues, they're like, oh yeah, adipose looks really different from compact bone. And compact bone doesn't look at all like blood. And blood looks a lot different from a neuron. You know what I mean? So that it's not as hard as you might think. You'll feel better after lab today. But I do have a couple people who either just had to leave or are not here. And y'all will get to look at in lab. I'll give you some time and I'll let you get those slides out again if you want to. All right. So we will have both of those on Thursday. The thing that I'm really strongly encouraging you to do is to not wait to study 4 through 6, Wednesday. Sorry to say, because that's going to own 4 through 4 and 5 by Tuesday. And then Tuesday, when we finish up the skin, that's just going to be, you're well on your way. You'll be ready when you come in here. Multiple choice test Thursday. Okay. All right. All right. So the skin, the integumentary system, which is skin. Okay. So that's what this means. The skin. We are going to look at what tissue types make up the skin, and we're expecting to see at least 2 of those tissue types, aren't we? We're expecting to see at least that. And we're going to just see what functions these tissue types have in this organ system called the skin. It is really, truly like your largest organ system. When you look at illustrations like this, some of these labeling of these structures can look kind of crazy. But after we go over all of the structures, hopefully the anatomy will help you to kind of realize, oh yeah, I can see how they function that way, right? Because does anatomy help us with physiology? Yes. Do they go hand in hand? Yes, they do. So when we think about the skin, it is an organ, and it is our largest organ. It is our largest organ, 15% or so of your body weight. When we think about the skin, we think about 2 layers. I know old school. Janie, not that just that I pick on you because you and I are old school, but are we old school, Janie?
We're not old school. We might be older school.
Older school? You mean older than old? Okay, but anyway, okay. Old school, though, we learned 3 layers of skin. You probably remember that thing. But actually, it's really considered to have this organ, skin, the integument, is said to have 2 layers. So the most superficial, which you all know what that means, the outermost, is actually the epidermis. And when we think about the epidermis in this little illustration, I want you to know the epidermis. Do y'all see where my fingers are right here? This is the epidermis. This is, right, is the epidermis. It looks like it has layers, doesn't it? We're going to see that it does. But this is the outermost, the superficial layer is called the epidermis. Epi means what? On top of, right? Doesn't mean above or on top of. Epi means that. Dermis means that it's on top of the dermis. So this is the deeper layer. This, right, all of this that I'm looking at right now. This dermis area looks like it's got a lot of, I don't really even see cells though, whatever, but I see a lot of extra ground matrix, do y'all? And I see some weird looking structures found in this dermal layer. Do you guys see that? And then the epi is on top of it. When we get to look at it a little bit closer, and even closer than this again, y'all see dermis here, but what was this? Epidermis. And you see there's this base layer of the epidermis that looks like something is lining it. Epithelium. So the epidermis is all epithelial, and the dermis with all that extracellular ground matrix, that's connective tissue. So we're looking at skin and we see, okay, I see 2 different tissue types. The epidermis is epithelial. We know those cells are going to be really close together, aren't they? They're going to be close together. We're going to know that it is avascular because epithelial is avascular, isn't it? but it's sitting on top of the dermis, isn't it? It's sitting on top of the dermis, and the dermis is what kind of tissue? It's connective tissue, and there's, did we say that's the most diverse group?
Yes.
Did we say that that is even the most abundant? It is, but okay, so we're going to see some more about that in just a second. Let's right now look at just the dermis, the epidermis, I'm sorry, the most superficial, the epidermis. And we said we see it on this picture as being everything between my fingers here, right? Right? And on this picture, we see it, this illustration is this entire. And we know that the epidermis is in layers too. Let's see if it makes sense to us what those layers, what they're doing and how they're doing it. Let's see if this kind of makes sense. I want you all to realize what you're seeing right here. And this is an illustration. And this is actually a person's skin that they've made a slice of it for pathology and stained it with methylene blue. So it's looking blue. But anyway, this is an actual human histology slide of skin. And when I look at this, the only thing we're seeing is really the epidermis. There are little parts of the dermis that are pushing up through here. But you all understand that what we're seeing right here on these slides are really the epidermis. And when I look at even the human tissue prep that's been stained, it almost looks like kind of distinct layers going on, doesn't it? Do y'all see that? That like there's this real dark border. Do y'all see that? Mm-hmm. And then above that, superficial to that, is another kind of layer here. Do you see that? And then it almost looks like another kind of dark, grainy looking border. Do you see that? When I say border, I mean layer, right? And so anyway, I can see that there are layers to the epidermis. What I would like you to know is, I would like you to know those 5 layers. There's 5 layers to that epidermis in thick skin. And thick skin's found on the palms and the soles of your feet. Have you ever wondered why the palms of your hands and the soles of your feet look different than the rest of your skin? It has an additional layer in the epidermis. That's why. It has 5 layers in the epidermis, where the rest of your skin, that's called thin skin, it has only 4. But let's look at the layers of the epidermis. Y'all excited to see them? All right. Now look, stratum is Latin for layer. Stratum, stratified, stratum. Y'all told me stratified meant layered, didn't you? So stratum is just Latin for layer. It's a layer. The basale is Latin for base layer. So where do you think you find the base layer? At the bottom of the epidermis. That makes good sense, doesn't it? Does it? At the bottom of the epidermis, where this base layer is found, we know the connective dermal tissue is pushing up into it. But what do we know is probably also in these, because doesn't epithelial, even though they're really, the cells are really tight together, don't they need nutrients? Don't they? Don't they? They need blood supply. So we understand that this base layer is getting everything it needs nutrient-wise to undergo mitosis. So when these cells are undergoing mitosis, which we know to mean what? Cell division. Where are those cells pushing to? To the surface, to the top. That makes sense? And you all told me that as they're pushing further away, they will start to look different. And you told me that if they're not in mitosis, they're probably in inner phase. Is that right? And they're functioning. They're factories, aren't they? And so they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. This little layer above the base layer is called the spinosum layer, spinosum. And then as those cells get even older and have made their products, they become very grainy. They become really, really kind of grainy. Can you see how, in the illustration, you can really see how granular they're looking? Is this cell right here any different than this one? It's just older. And it's just been making its products, isn't it? So it's become really, really grainy. Let me tell you what those products really are. It's mostly, predominantly keratin. Y'all have heard of keratin, haven't you? Most of these cells, in the illustration, they were drawn this way to look alike for you. most of these cells are actually called keratinocytes because what's their cell's function? To produce a protein called what? Keratin. So what do you think that protein keratin does for you? What do you think it does? What does it do for us? Keratin is a protein that is going to waterproof us. It is going to protect us. It's going to be like a shield. It really, truly is like a shield, this protein is, keratin. Y'all have seen the word on like shampoos and lotions, haven't you? Rich in a whatever keratin, right? Beta carotene, and we'll talk about, right? So you'll hear about these keratin in that. And that's really true because that's a naturally produced protein from our skin that does protect us, it waterproofs us. This is the predominant protein that we think about with skin because these are the predominant cells in the epidermis. Do you think you need to know that? All right. All right. Now, as those granulosome, now it's only in, now this next layer is only in thick skin, soles and palms, only in thick skin. It's not there in other skin, you know, that you look at. It's not there, but it's there in the thick skin. It's called the lucidum layer. It's really shiny and it adds a thickness and a toughness to skin. So that's the lucidum, only found in thick skin. And then the cells are dying. At this point, they're dead. Okay, and now this is the corneum, is the most superficial dead layer, and up to 30 different layers. That's a lot of layers of dead skin, isn't it? And is that what it should be? Yes. Do we want it to be any less than that? No. Do we need it to be any more than that? No. What'd you say? What? I'm sorry. Was there a question? Okay. So no. So we want it to be just right, remember? So don't think about that as being, ooh, that's just right. Now, if you look at this up, we can't see it from the illustration, but you can from this. This is where dander comes from. Or when you talk about exfoliating skin, it's from this very most superficial corneum layer. You don't want to get too low, though, do you? So yes, that's where that's from. Any questions for me so far? All right, so when we're thinking about the epidermis, we understand that in the base layer, those cells are dividing and pushing toward the surface. It usually takes anywhere from 12 to 14, 16 weeks. It can take that long for the cells that are in the base layer to end up being exfoliated. And that's a normal progression. Now, if that progression gets too accelerated or too slow, is that going to be a problem? That's going to be a problem. I can tell you all about an autoimmune disease that causes an accelerated proliferation in this basal layer, and it causes the cells to be pushing so fast and so furious that they're hardly getting time to go through these processes. It's causing thick, silvery patches that will crack and bleed, and it can be extensive. Does anybody know what this autoimmune disease is? It's psoriasis. It's psoriasis. So the process is happening too fast. And you know, psoriasis can be really, some people have it, it's really serious for them. You know, they really deal with it, it's kind of serious. But anyway, it's an autoimmune disease. Now, we can also have allergies that can cause, some silvery kind of patches too, but does anybody know what they are? And they're not usually nearly as severe, even though people who have them think they are, but they're not as severe psoriasis, but silvery kind of patches that causes itching and bleeding, and they can do that too. Does anybody know what the allergy thing is? Eczema. That's eczema. That's a hypersensitivity reaction. All right, so but that's a different thing. And those are in your, hey, those two things are in your disorders table. Y'all got those knocked out now? You know, difference between psoriasis and eczema. Okay. Now, any questions for me? Now, in this epidermis that we're still talking about, there are other kinds of cells as well but the predominant cells are keratinocytes. The other cells I want you to know about are called melanocytes. What do you think melanocytes produce? Melanin. Melanin. And what is melanin? Melanin is pigment. It's pigment. So you have these cells that are producing this protein called melanin, and melanin is pigment. So where do we get the recipes for our pigment from? Our DNA that we got from our parents. So there's recipes that can be yellow, recipes that can look kind of reddish, recipes that are, you know, lighter tan, recipes that are brown, recipes for black. There's all kinds, and the extremes are the rarest that we see for recipes. But there's a lot of different kind of recipes, and how they're going to be expressed and whatever is going to be the melanocytes producing melanin that have that particular appearance. Now melanin, as melanin is being released, and these cells are undergoing mitosis, the melanin gets dispersed. And so we have this overall kind of color. Is that right? Now, if we are being exposed to UVA and UVB radiation, what is our melanocytes going to get that message? Our melanocytes say, I see that you're exposing yourself to radiation, which you know better than to do, but I'm going to try to protect you here, so I'm going to put out some more melanin, right? And so what do we call that? What's happening? We're tanning, right? We're tanning. And all people can tan. You know, it just means the melanocytes are overactive. They're having to be overactive. So what does that tell you that melanin does for you? Does it do something for you? Melanin is a pigment that protects you from UVA and UVB radiation. Both of them are radiations that we get from the sun. And, you know, again, by the way, we need some of it, but we don't need to be overexposed to it, because if we are, can radiation cause mutational changes in our DNA? And can it lead to cancer? Yes. And so our melanin protects us. So, yay for melanin, right? What cells produce melanin? Melanocytes. If you have, and most of us do, if you have enough melanocytes close enough together in your integument that you can actually see them, you can't feel them, but you can see them. You think about those as freckles, don't you? If you can feel them, what do you call them? If they have raised up part of that, they're called moles. That's exactly right. They're aggregates of melanocytes, enough of them together, grouping together, that you can see them. Almost every person has either a freckle or moles. Some people have quite a few, right? That's also genetic. So is there anybody here that doesn't have a single freckle or a mole? Okay. Most people have. Okay. So, are we good so far? Now, I'm going to want you to know about melanocytes and what they do, their function. I'm going to want you to know about keratinocytes. I am going to want you to know that this epidermis has really 5 distinct layers in thick skin, but 4 in all the rest. Does anybody know where your skin is the thinnest? Your eyelids. That's exactly right. Your eyelids. Okay, so okay. If you look, and this is FYI, which means what? I'm never going to ask you this question, but just because I know you're interested in this, there are also some nerve cells that are in that base layer. These are called tactile cells, and there's also other types of connective tissues, dendritic cells. But this is FYI, because the epidermis is mostly going to be keratinocytes and melanocytes, isn't it? But why tactile? Because if something were pressing on you, when you, even if it's just a little bit, when you want to know, could that be protective? Especially if like a tick is crawling on you. Can a tick harm you?
Yes.
Do you want to be able to feel it if it's crawling on you? Yeah, you do. And so tactile means pressure These nerves are going to be really responsive to like a little bit of pressure for touch. And is touch sensory, is that important for humans? It really is. And so, okay. And then dendritic, which is just FY again, is just going to be derived from monocytes. Wait a minute, what did monocytes do? They became macrophages, right? Macrophages do what? Big eaters. They're our dump trucks. They're helping to clean up, aren't they? Okay. Living in all of this are microbes. Hundreds of different species of microorganisms. And these microbes that live here are protecting you. Now, some of them can take the opportunity to cause disease sometimes, especially if there's been injury to the skin or whatever. But for the most part, they are your friends. You have got to have them, and they protect you. These microorganisms, these bacteria that live in and on our skin, they produce byproducts that produce an acid kind of shield that protects us from other potential pathogens. So they're really protective. Okay. All right. So do you have any questions about the 5 layers of the epidermis? Yes?
Can you go back up to
Keratinocytes. Keratinocytes are cells that produce a protein called keratin. They're the predominant cell. They way far and away outnumber the other cells in the epidermis. And keratin is that major protein that waterproofs us and protects us. Now, this is why you don't blow up in a bathtub, is because of keratin. You all told me that water always moves down its concentration gradient. So when you get in a bathtub, why doesn't the water from the bathtub that has a lower osmolarity than you do, why doesn't it just pour into you and make you blow up? Because keratin. That's exactly right. Keratin.
So that's why.
But you shouldn't stay in there too long. Because it looks like you're shriveling up, but you're not shriveling up. You know what you're doing? They're kind of blowing up. Which is
So when we die, you know how people like
shrivel up.
they're not really shrivel up. You know when they blow up.
Oh, no,
Yes.
that's because of the microorganisms. That, you know, when we die, our cells die, the bacteria don't. And so it's a lot to do with the product of the microorganisms that are in us producing gas. Nice thought there, yes. Brianna, did you have a question? Did somebody raise their hand? I couldn't hear you. Okay.
What is that? What is that about that one?
Granulosum.
Okay, what was that?
It's just that these cells, these spinosum cells, they're maturing. This layer is where these are kind of maturing. They're beginning to produce their product. Their product is keratin. And in the granulosum layer, you can see they have a lot of it in there. And they become granular looking. And that's why that's called the granulosum layer. Stratum just means layer. Does that make sense? So just to sort of help you sort of figure out, you know, some of the terminology. Some things we can have little clues like that. Others you just sort of learn them. But whatever. Okay, so great. And you've got a lot of slides to talk about them, and certainly you can see how they're spelled and pointing to them. Now, you all said this epidermis layer is epithelial, where the cells are really tightly compact together, and as they are going toward the surface, they're dying because they're getting away from nutrients. But that's a good thing because we need that layer of protection. But it's sitting on a layer called the dermis. Is that right? So it's sitting on this dermal layer, and this is where we're going to have the collagen and the good stuff that you start to run out of. So, okay, all right. Is this where you have all of these fibroblasts end up coming in and laying down like these fibers like collagen and elastin? And you have accessory structures like hair follicles and glands, sweat glands, oil glands. This is good stuff. Is it going to keep your skin healthy? Yes. And you have blood vessels, the vascular supply here. So when you see the dermal here looks dark purple, pushing into the epidermis. Do you see that? This is the basal layer of the epidermis. It looks like a roller coaster, right? But it's the dermal layer that's pushing up into it, right? This is actually formed in utero, and I don't care that you know this, but this is formed in utero, and this is what gives those fingerprints, and everybody's different. Even identical twins don't have the same fingerprints, do they? No, they don't. So it's that dermal layer pushing up into the stratum basale, right? And pushing up into that, causing those ridges. But anyway, that's just FYI. But I just want you to know what it's made of. It's where you're going to find the hair follicles and the sweat glands and the sebaceous glands, which is oil. We'll see in a second. Sebaceous is oil. Sebum is oil. Sebaceous glands secrete sebum. And all of those things that are very protective for us. And if you look, I think this slide, this electron micrograph does it better than anything else. When you look, scan the dermal layer, do you see how fibrous it is? It's so fibrous and it's so protected, right? All these fibrocytes. Okay. Underneath that, and this is what we used to learn back in the old days. We learned this was part of the skin, but now they don't really call it that. I think it's just whatever. But it's the dermis is sitting on top of the hypodermis. How would I know this is below the dermis? Because of the word, because of the prefix what? Hypo. That's exactly right. So this dermis is sitting on this hypodermis, and even in this illustration, I can see that there's some fat there. You see how much there's fat here, and there really is. This hypodermis has a lot of adipose tissue. It's composed of a lot of adipose tissue, but it's also composed of vessels, blood vessels, blood that's bringing oxygenated nutrients here and also returning deoxygenated blood in these veins, right? So there's a lot of, it's very highly vascular, and this is why we can give hypodermic injections and we can try to get medicine pretty quickly to the system. Because is it very vascular? And through diffusion, would that get to your system pretty well? It would, right? So everybody has, sometimes people talk about this layer as the sub-Q. Have you heard of that? So these are hypodermic, this hypodermic layer is the layer that's a layer of fat, and it needs to be a certain amount of fat for the skin to be healthy, and vascular, and it's supporting the dermis. And the dermis is supporting the what? Exactly. Are we good so far? Are we good so far? Any questions? All right. Remember, it's what I say that you're responsible for in here, or the insights and the disorders. So when we think about this sub-Q fat, as adults after puberty, we see fat depositions in different places depending on gender. What do you think plays a role in that? Why do women have fat in different areas than men? And why do women have as much as 10% more body fat that's normal? That's a normal range for them to have that over men. Why? Because somebody said it. Because women are the ones that are going to end up, and this plays a role in it, women are the ones that are going to end up having a 9-month gestation period where there might, maybe at a time there's a panic. So should they have more reserves? And also women are going to be the ones usually nourishing the new neonate, the infant for at least the first couple of years. That means making breast milk. And what is breast milk half made of? Fat. It is. And is that normal? Is that what it's supposed to be? Yeah, for the development, the proper development of that fetus at first, and then the neonate and toddler. Yes, that's exactly right. It should be. So women's hormones are different than men's hormones, and women's hormones encourage this storage of fat, and that can be used later as nutrients and for energy. All right, so we kind of all know that men look different than women. Let's celebrate that because that's the truth, and they are. So, okay, Now let's talk about skin pigments, and let's see if skin pigments can help us sometimes in diagnostic medicine. How in the world can looking at somebody's skin pigments, the color of their skin, help us? And when we're thinking about diagnostic medicine, well, let's take a look and see if that's not really true, if we can, if we're paying attention. I want you all to remember me when you get into clinical medicine and you start doing head-to-toe assessments. I can't tell you how important they are. I mean, I just cannot stress to you enough how important it is for head-to-toe assessments. And unfortunately, in medicine now, a lot of the time, people are not having time to do head-to-toe assessments because people are being treated for their one complaint. You know what I mean? So you don't get anybody undressed, and you don't really listen to what might else be going on and look for other things. Where a head-to-toe assessment can be done relatively quickly, and they can give so much information, right? So I wish people were paying a little bit more attention to head-to-toe assessments out there in the practicing community. Y'all will pay attention in clinicals, but I know that. But I mean, practitioners, I wish that but people are under time constraints, and so they're just treating the ailment, not the person, you know. But maybe we need to take a few minutes and do that, because some of this really can tell you a whole bunch. So let's look at some things that can cause the skin to look certain colors, okay? Hemoglobin, I want you to know, hemoglobin is a protein that is found in red blood cells. The heme part of this protein is a pigment. Heme, as a prefix, means blood. Maybe y'all already knew that, but if you didn't, we're building on our knowledge. So hemoglobin is a protein found in red blood cells. It is the predominant protein inside of red blood cells. It delivers oxygen to our tissues. The heme part of that is an actual pigment protein. It looks red. And so this is why our blood looks what? Red. This is why our blood looks red. And in our dermal region under our skin, are there blood vessels bringing blood? Yeah, bringing blood to those. And can we actually see that even through our epidermis? Can we see it? How many of you all blush? How many of you blush? Or if you've ever been hit hard enough, you can see a darkening. You can see that happening. That's because blood is rushing to the site. And so you can actually see through the skin. So hemoglobin. I want you to know that keratin is going to be found in, it's a yellow pigment found in some vegetables and whatever. Now, we don't usually see this in human skin unless it's infants that are just starting off with their food sources. So you all know that for infants, it's highly recommended that you go on prescribed schedules of how you introduce food. And when you start introducing those vegetables that might have keratin, which is really healthy for them, but when you start introducing those food sources, usually you're slowly doing it, so they're only getting that, and because they're only getting that, they're getting enough of it. You'll start to see it in their skin sometimes. How many of y'all seen that? Has anybody? Some of y'all have, and it's not uncommon. But parents will freak. Parents will freak out sometimes when their child starts looking at these colors, and they'll see this. Melanin, we said, you have tons of different recipes that you may have inherited, right? And there are a lot of alleles. Alleles are all the information that contribute to that trait. There are a ton of alleles. This isn't specific. There are a lot of alleles that contribute to this trait. And this is why we see a rainbow of melanin in the Homo sapiens, one race, Homo sapiens. We see a rainbow. We see there's probably no two people in this room that have exactly the same melanin recipes. So anyway, and how they're expressed. So we see anything from very, very light tones to really almost black tones. And by the way, those two extremes, that can be problems for those two extremes. Having too light means you don't have enough melanin. So what might you be at risk for? well, burning, but
Mutations.
mutations, so
Radiation.
skin cancer and radiation, right? So problems with that. But what's the problem if you're too dark? If you're all the way at the, I've probably in my whole career only seen about 2 people who are truly black. And it's when you see somebody who's truly black and someone who's albino, yeah, I mean, it stands out to you. So what's the problem with being so dark?
But it means that we're talking about the tissues.
Oh, keloiding, that if they get injured? No, that's not really. Did you see it like that? No. So no, that's not a problem. But I mean, it could be in dark, but no. It's that because if you have too dark of a melanin, then you can't get any UV light in, and if you don't get enough UV light in, you're going to be vitamin D and calcium deficient. And it can cause such vitamin D and calcium deficiencies that in some very, very dark people, which is rare to be this dark, but very dark, then they can have bone disorders that look almost like rickets. So yeah, so that can happen. So when we talk about anything in the human populations, we really kind of have this rainbow type of thing happening, but extremes can cause problems in anything.
So yes. That while people closer to the equator, they're of the darker tone.
Yeah.
That's why they're more malnourished.
No.
Okay.
No. Okay, so that just brought up quite a few things. Okay, so people from equatorial regions that have more recent ancestors from equatorial regions, we're all from the same seed. But people who are from more recently from the equatorial regions are going to have darker skin tone because does that protect them from that direct sun? Yeah. And it can be very protected, and that's a wonderful thing. But where you're seeing as far as malnutrition, people in those regions, it depends on weather conditions, and they can have areas that there's famine in. So because of the arid, whatever, there can be these periods of where they can't get any food growing. But that's happened in more regions than just equatorial regions. That's happened in other things too. So it's not just that. Where I'm talking about, I'm not talking about people who've gone through, like, in some African places right now, there's African countries, there's real famine happening because of weather. That's weather related. That has nothing to do with human. That's weather. Well, it has to do with human activity. But anyway, but that's not, whatever. They're starving because they don't have food. But I'm talking about people who have food. They have everything available, but they're so dark that their skin, we're supposed to be outside. We're just not supposed to be laying in the sun or doing tanning. We're supposed to be outside though, and we're supposed to be out there, and we're supposed to get enough UV radiation that we can make vitamin D, and then vitamin D can help to encourage calcium absorption, and calcium absorption is needed for strong what? Bones. And so, we can, and it's needed for a lot of other things, but yeah, strong bones. And so this is where we see people who are living in regions that have plenty of food, and plenty of food sources, but they're so dark that they have bone disorders because they have such low calcium levels.
So could they,
that's kind of rare. Did I tell you there's rare to be black or white? It's rare. There's a rarity to be black or white. There's really no such real thing, but whatever.
So can they make up their deficiencies in their diet? Or
no, they can't make it, so they're going to have to try to get supplements. They will try to do that. Because when we see people who have deficiencies for whatever reasons, we try to do supplements. Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to be really important that they get it, right? Yeah. Okay. But let's look. Those are some things that are natural, right? Those are natural colors. Those are natural. But let's look at some things that aren't a natural color. I want you all to know what cyanosis means, and it means the cyanosis is a bluing or blueness that can happen of the skin, or purpling, if you will. Depending on what skin tone you had going in, you might be looking blue, but if you have a darker skin tone, melanin going, then it's going to start looking even, it's going to almost be purpley black. So this is going to be an important thing to know because it means that circulation's impaired. And so circulation, you are not getting the circulation that you need with blood supply. So what is happening is either the pump is not working, right? Or maybe it's too cold, the temperature has gotten to where it's too cold, and your blood vessels have constricted. So if your blood vessels have constricted so much, all the blood is going to your vital organs, staying in your vital organs to keep them alive. Because you can survive without your fingers and your toes and your nose, but you can't survive without your vital organs functioning, all the time. So you're either in too cold of a temperature or your pump is not pumping. How many of you seen somebody having a heart attack or a cardiac or respiratory event where you're seeing, and you'll see cyanosis first in the thin skin areas. So like around the nares and around the lips, the labia, and then extremities. You'll see it first occurring there. But when you start seeing that, you better be moving. You got to do something, right? Okay. So erythro as a prefix means red. I don't care where you see that, that means red. So erythema is a condition that means that you're red, and it can be because of, I talked to you about blushing or sunburn or anger or injury, like a whatever injury. It can cause this erythema. There's some rashes that are referred to as erythemic rashes, because they look what? They can look red, right? So that's abnormal. Jaundice. And by the way, are you going to always see these just from looking at somebody's face? No, this is what I meant about that head to toe assessment thing and being aware of this. So jaundice is a yellowing, which is not to be confused with keratin from vegetables. This is a yellowing, oranging, darkening of the skin, and it's going to be because, and please listen to this, it is going to be because of something going wrong with the liver. The liver is an organ. Now, I want you all to be able to explain why and what is happening. So you might want to listen to this and then try to write it down as you listen. What did I tell you hemoglobin is? I told you it's a protein, so it's not a cell, it's a protein that's found inside of red cells. Right, that's exactly what I told you. Now look, red cells don't live forever. You have millions dying every second. And you have new red cells replacing them, right? So your red cells are always being replaced, right? And they don't live forever. They live for about 120 days, whatever. But they don't live forever. And you have many that are being recycled at any second in your life. When I say recycled, it means that that protein is going to have to be broken down. So hemoglobin, as hemoglobin gets broken down, y'all know proteins are made of what monomer units? Amino acids. And so can we reuse those amino acids to build new proteins? Mm-hmm. Perfect recycling. But then there's that heme, that pigment part. And that pigment molecule needs enzymes from the liver to break it down. And if the liver is not functioning, not producing those enzymes, then you can't break the heme part down. And what happens is you're going to get this byproduct called bilirubin. And y'all have probably heard this is a byproduct of heme breaking down. If you don't have the enzymes from the liver to break it all the way down to bile, it's going to stay in your bloodstream. We want it breaking all the way down to bile. And then bile from the liver will be excreted into the small intestines, and it has a function. So we need bile. We get it from this, but we have to have the liver functioning to do that. Do you get what I'm saying? So what's the problem with bilirubin? I don't think yellow is a bad color. So, what's the problem? You just start to turn yellow. How many of you have seen people with bilirubin, high bilirubin? The whites of their eyes can turn pumpkin color. They can really get there, right? How many of you seen it? It's impressive, isn't it? So what's wrong with that? What's wrong with bilirubin being in your system? Enough so that you can macroscopically, with your own eyes, you can see them turning yellow. What's wrong with that?
Everything is denied or go away at some point, so it's taking its function from.
So you're thinking, well, it's keeping you from getting bile, and I've already hinted to you that bile needs to be in your intestine. It needs to be in your intestines for nutrition. So that's not going to be good. But the real problem is this: bilirubin, you want to write down, is neurotoxic. Bilirubin is neurotoxic. What does that mean? That word means it's poison to the nervous system. So if bilirubin's building up, what tissues are suffering and potentially losing their function?
Nervous tissue.
The nervous tissue. What system keeps us in entire homeostasis?
Nervous system.
So can we have bilirubin up like that? Babies are almost all babies are born with elevated bilirubins. Some babies are born with enough bilirubin that you can see them. You can see it. You can see, you know, and a lot of times family members will come in and say, what pretty skin. Because up to a point it looks pretty good. And then it starts to look like, wait a minute, is that a little bit orange? Maybe that was a little bit yellow. But anyway, why are all babies born with a little bit of bilirubin elevated? Why? But what does that have to do with the liver? So they have baby livers. They have immature livers is really the answer to that question. And their livers are immature. As soon as they start eating, when they start eating, it's going to act, the liver is a major player in the digestive system. It's going to start activating that liver. And as soon as they can start clearing that out, it's going to be okay. And that's why you're relating it to bowel movements. They haven't had bowel movements. You have bowel movements when your intestines are working. Isn't that right? And if your intestines are working, what's working? The liver is working. And they have baby livers. And so it's okay that it's up to a certain point. But they're going to be tested for their bilirubin levels. And if they have too high levels, they're going to be put under lights. Why? Because the liver isn't the only enzymes, producing enzymes that can conjugate and break down bilirubin. UV radiation can too. So they get put under those lights and they get their little clothes are taken off of them, so more skin contact is gone, and they can help to lower the bilirubin levels until their liver can pick up, right? And we need for it to be that way. It's been rare that I've ever had a baby that needed a transfusion. But if their bilirubin levels stay high enough for long enough, they're going to have to get a transfusion. You got to get that bilirubin out. If it's staying high enough long enough. Anybody know that a baby that had that? It's rare. You have, Jane?
My son.
Your son had to have a transfusion because of bilirubin, because of liver. What week was he born? What gestation? Is that too personal?
He was born like maybe 2 weeks early.
Only 2 weeks.
But his liver enzymes weren't conjugated.
They weren't getting
They
rid of
weren't
the bilirubin.
conjugated, and so he was given phenobarbital for a month. And they said that he had to be fed it with the beginning of it was every 12 hours, but it had to be at the beginning of the bottle because they said they knew that it would taste nasty, but that he'd be so hungry. And it brought it down to bilirubin, got up to 15 or 16. And that was before the transfusion, and after the transfusion, it got down to 9 and started falling up to 12 and back up to 15. And that's when they started getting more. But he was almost healthy after that. Within a month's time, it had dropped down.
Yeah. Different hospitals will have different guidelines for transfusions. And we didn't get the units for that, but there are particular units that are used, and like the UVA was 18. You have to get to 18 before they would consider a transfusion. But you know, it's whatever. You know, you talk to the parents too. You figure it out. And I'm sure he was under the lights, wasn't he? Under lights. And then you try to feed them more frequently, not less frequently, more frequently, so that you can really get that liver going. Sometimes breastfed babies are fed really frequently, right? But sometimes that breast milk is so easily digested, it actually won't stimulate the liver as quickly as sometimes other
formulas. So sometimes they'll recommend that. So there's all kinds of things that you can try to address. And that is why they're checking bilirubin levels. And usually it's no problem. What did old people do back in the day? They used to put their babies in the windows. You know, they did. They really did. Not when it was cold or the window was up, but just so light could be coming in. Now windows don't let that light in, so it wouldn't be doing them any good if they did that. And I'm not saying that that's all you need to do, but they'll be watching that, and that's okay. Now, what we really worry about too, though, is usually when we think about jaundice, we're thinking about people who have infectious diseases and or autoimmune diseases or something that is causing their liver to shut down. And if they have viruses that have attacked the liver, can they look jaundice? If they have autoimmune diseases that have attacked their liver, can they look jaundice? If they're abusing chemicals, can they look jaundice? They can. And it can be an indicator that the liver's going to shut down. Can you live without the liver? No, you cannot live without the liver. So functioning. So it's an important finding. Bronzing of the skin, this darkening bronzing of the skin is a real indicator of somebody having, and when I say bronzing, I think, you know, that's the color that you see in people who are lighter tones, but darker tone people can have this too. It's just that their skin is darkening. So what happens in this, though, is somebody comes in and you're doing this head-to-toe assessment, and you're seeing that, you know, they tell you that they're darkening, their skin's darkening, and you say, well, have you been out in the sun? And you wouldn't know that because most people don't go out in the sun nude. So you would know that if you did a head-to-toe assessment, because there would be no tan lines. Okay, there's no tan lines. They really are darkening. And you think to yourself, this might be something you're thinking about. This is hormone disorder. It's called Addison's disease. Addison's disease is a hyposecretion or a deficiency, hyposecretion from the adrenal glands, and that's kind of all you need to know for that for right now. And it can be a real indicator. President JFK had that. Oh, you might be thinking of the big orange elephant, but no, I'm not thinking of that one. JFK had it. You know, people thought that JFK was really healthy because they said, you know, he was tan looking and, you know, fit looking and whatever, but he actually was not healthy at all. He had Addison's disease. He had back issues. He had a ton of stuff going on with him. But that whole thing about being tan as a sign of health is very recent in human evolution. That's only in the last like 60, 70, I guess, years now. Before then, people didn't really want to look tan, you know, or darkening. You just know what I'm saying? But then it became like a health look. So that's why all these tanning beds came about, right? And they're very unhealthy. They're crazy. I can't even believe they're not regulated. How unhealthy that is. So this can be a sign of Addison's disease, which is a hyposecretion from the adrenal glands. And when those adrenal glands aren't functioning, there's going to be another hormone that gets produced that make the melanocytes think they need to be working. It's sort of a whole false kind of scenario for those melanocytes, but then they start producing more color, no matter what color you are to begin with. Pallor can be a sign that someone is anemic and lack of blood flow and or a lack of red blood cells. A lack of blood flow and or a lack of red blood cells. So this can be pallor. One of the things that you can see for pallor is this in the conjunctiva. So if you look down in somebody's lids and you're not seeing it be nice and pink, instead it's really just no color, that can be a sign of lack of blood flow and or anemia. Anemia, A-N-E-M-I-A. Anemia means a low red blood cell count. Anemia. So you can look in the eyes, you can look at the beds of the nails, and if you push the nail and it gets real white and then you let it go, how quickly it perfuses back to color can be a sign of that. So anyway, that's that. Albinism is genetic. It is a genetic lack of recipe for what? Melanin. And albinism, there can be a variety of this. Some people that have, you know, true albinism, they will have no hair, pigment color in the hair, the eyes, the skin, Are they very much at risk for sun exposure? Yes, they really are. You have to be very, very careful with that. Now, a hematoma is what you all call a bruise. And I do need you to know this terminology, a hematoma. So our bruise is benign, a bruise is just nothing. That's just nothing. That's a bruise, nothing. Or can bruises be serious? Yeah, they can be really serious. So you want to pay attention to bruising. If somebody looks like they have an abnormal amount of bruising and they can't tell you like they fell down 4 flights of stairs, then you know, I'm just exaggerating there, but you need to be asking some questions. Bruising can obviously be a sign of abuse, can it not? Absolutely it can. It can be a sign. And by the way, are these bruises always visible? No. What would you have needed to do? That's so bruising, you would want to see where the bruises are. If it was consistent to what was the history, that would be an important thing. But it can also be a sign of a couple of very serious disorders, one of them being liver disease and one of them being cancer of the white blood cell lines. So these are going to be things that you think about. So now most bruises are what? Just because you stubbed your toe or you did something, right? You know what you did, right? And you got a bruise. And so, okay. But should we be aware that not all bruises are normal and not all bruises? And so you want to have this in your head as well when you're thinking about it. So hematomas. Also, hematomas can be deeper than what you just see. So you can maybe see on the surface a pretty big margin of a hematoma, but there could be some compartmentalized blood that's there that has been lost from the blood capillaries. That means it's lost from blood volume, and that could be a problem. So hematomas we just want to know about them. Yeah.
So 2 years ago, I fell. I had glasses then, and I was like getting adjusted. And I fell, and I got a huge hematoma on my leg.
Yes.
And it's still there.
Right now, it's still there.
Right now.
Okay, well that's what I meant about that compartment thing.
Yeah, that's what the doctor said.
And so, so that's not normal.
Nope.
And so what happens is most bruises, and even if it's something like that, the system will start to break down those cells and start to, like, with phagocytes and with fluid movement, will start to disperse it. But if it hasn't, you sometimes have to go in.
Yep,
and
that's what they said.
But that's been a long time.
They said most likely it'll stay there. They like checked it out and they said it was okay.
Okay, because the problem with it, if it doesn't reabsorb, if it doesn't go in, it stays there, it can be putting pressure on vital structures surrounding, structures like muscles, fascia, nerves. So you do usually watch when there's been something like that. That's a whole long time to have it.
Definitely, because I was worried after they told me it was going to go down in a month. And it didn't.
Yeah, it's usually no more than a month.
Yeah.
And you've been to see
I've been
the
to
same
see two or three different doctors.
All right. Well, yeah, that's unusual that it would last that long. It's unusual they allow it to last that long because sometimes they do have to go in and they have to clean it, like get it out of that area. You haven't noticed that you've lost any sort of muscle tone or
No, it's
any
just
sort
my
of
thigh.
nerve? Just your thigh?
Just my thigh.
Thigh's not important.
Just my thigh.
Don't say just my thigh. Thighs are important. So anyway, no, if you haven't noticed nerve compression or muscle or joint or ache or pain, whatever, but that can happen in those situations. So hematomas can be a serious thing. Now, hemangiomas are birthmarks. And how many of you have birthmarks? Yeah, okay. Quite a few. Birthmarks there can be a couple of different kinds. So actually there's quite a few kinds, more than they're talking about. But anyway, y'all have heard of strawberry birthmarks. And what these are little tumors of the vessels they're benign tumors of the vessels in the dermal system that don't quite cover. So you can see through and you can see them, right? So most strawberry, your textbook says strawberry birthmarks usually disappear by adulthood. But I've known some people who kept strawberry birthmarks for a long time, into adulthood, but they can sometimes disappear. Now, the ones that don't, though, these hemangiomas that don't, are the port wine. Has anybody ever seen somebody with a port wine birthmark? It's not you, is
Is
it?
that what this is?
No. Port wines. I want y'all to Google this when you're on your own and you do Google port wines. These are typically, the ones I've seen are neck and face. Like they're often
Are they
there,
red?
and they're huge. And they look dark, black, purple, violet, red, and they look bumpy. It's not smooth. It's bumpy, and it's, so port wine birthmarks are not dangerous. They're not dangerous. And they are not, whatever, they're benign tumors. But a lot of people try to address them because of just the social, aesthetic complications that can happen, especially if they're on like the entire half of a face. And I've seen that before, like half of the face out of port wine. So there are things they can't get rid of them, but they can do things with laser surgeries and stuff to try to minimize some of the appearances of them. Freckles and moles, I told you what they are. Then we have these ridges and fingerprints I told you about too. I don't ask you about flexion creases and lines, but they're important to think about because as we develop in utero, we are a bilateral creature, like a lot of animals are bilateral. So as we are developing, we should have some symmetry, right, between the two sides. So what you look for in a pediatric assessment is not that adults don't matter, but you can usually pick this up in pediatrics. You know how healthy term babies are born with creases, aren't they? And those creases should be bilateral. You would want to see that because if they're not in the legs, what could it suggest? Hip dysplasia, right? Or if the spine, the buttocks don't look like they're bilateral, could that be dysplasia of the spine or deviation in the spine? It could. So you just look for those creases because we are bilateral, right? That's the kind of thing. That's the only time I would think to even think about that. So let's talk about functions of the skin, and then we might take another quick little break. But some functions of the skin. Maybe it makes sense that it's our barrier to the external environment, isn't it? So it is our barrier. It is tough. It's dry. And this acid mantle thing is because of the microbes that live on our skin, as they should. Can your skin be too clean? Yes. Yes, it can. So, there's a proper hygiene, right? You don't want to be sterilizing your skin. It's going to harm it, right? Or over drying out your skin, is that going to harm it as well? And so careful about what goes on with the skin. It's a water barrier, it's a UV barrier. It's for vitamin D synthesis, and this is what I was talking about with people who are truly black, how this can be a problem because they're reflecting too much away. But with UV light, this is going to help to maintain a healthy skeletal system because this is going to help with vitamin D synthesis and help with calcium absorption in the system, and it's going to have widespread effects being used as a cofactor. So sensory, we said sensory is important for protection. If we can feel pain, can we move away from it and address it? Yeah, if we start to feel something too hot, we can move away. If we have something's pinching us, we can move away. We can, it's important, but also important for social and for reproductive. I'm not going to go there, but y'all know what I'm talking about. So anyway, all kinds of reasons for sensory. And then thermoregulation. It's amazing because this is helping us to stay thermoregulated. We forget that we're not like cold-blooded creatures where we have to be in an environment. We take on our environment's temperature. We can survive for a little while going out in the cold, maybe not this cold, but a little cold, because if it's a little bit cold, we'll sense it and we'll start to shiver. And we have a ton of muscles. For every hair follicle you have, every one, you have a little muscle. But any muscle contractions, is that going to help us to stay warm? And then if it's hot, we don't just drop down dead, do we? As long as it's not too hot for a little while. But we can start to sweat, and that's going to cool us off, isn't it? So skin is a really important thing for thermoregulation. and I hadn't really thought of this. I'll be honest with y'all, until this, your textbook talking about the psychological and social functions. Now, I certainly knew that with port lines because I'd seen some port lines people who'd been sent to UVA for port line things. And so it's something like that's so obvious. But I hadn't really thought about things like your eyebrow, like your expressions, Do they help you with communication? Yeah. Yeah, so sometimes this is why it's so important we know that sometimes those written words like on email or text or letters even, people still write letters? They should. So anyway, those kinds of things, it can be very different from when someone is saying it to you, can it? Because you're receiving so much more from a person face to face than you are on like text or email or letters. So all of that communications, there's things we don't think about, but they really help with that. Let's take a quick break and we'll come back and talk about hair. And then we are going to move on to the lab and look at our slides, okay? But how do y'all feel about this material? Is this material, are you already seeing, other than the terminology that you might not be familiar with, but are you already seeing that, okay, I'm familiar with some of this, and this is getting a little better. Okay, all right, or maybe even more interesting. All right, I'll pause it. We'll come back in about 10 minutes. Sorry I'm needing the breaks, but it's each section of the task. Well, I just think any way you can be prepared, because you have to pay for that thing. So I've had people say, oh, I'm just going to take it the first time just to see what it's like. That costs a lot of money. Be prepared. Maybe you don't have to do it again. And it's time. Distance, traveling, the time that you're there is like a half a day. I mean, oh my gosh. So try to pass it for time. And again, pros and minus. All right. So, great. Thank you all for sharing information with each other. That's helpful. And then also let our TLC know that y'all want that on our campus, those tutoring times. And hopefully they'll give you a room number to let you know where they're going to be. And I will listen out for where those rooms are going to be scheduled so that I can tell you too, okay? All right, so hair. So this is what we're going to talk about. I'm very specific in hair and nails when I ask you about. A lot of this is just FYI, okay? So I think you all have kind of gotten used to my inflection saying, you need to know that. I'll say that usually preface, or, this is something you need to know. So anyway, hopefully you kind of tuned into that. But there are some things that we want to know about hair. And when we think about hair, its functions, there's some things that, you may not have really kind of even thought about. Humans don't have enough real body hair to really keep us warm, right? So we don't really have enough of that. But we do have a hair on our head that can help to prevent like sunburn, too much sun exposure or sunburns or whatever. And it can keep a little warmth in. That is really true. And then you might not have thought about it, but the differences in hair between the genders can actually play a role in attraction and whatever between the genders. So this is absolutely true. And we know that at puberty, does your hair change at puberty? You end up getting more. You get axillary and pubic hair, right? So this again is going to be one of those clues that give the opposite sex clues that you're now prepared sexually and to reproduce, at least physically. So anyway, so these are going to be some of the things. Now, how did the different body hair types? There's lanuga that's found in fetal hair. So fetuses are in a water environment, aren't they? They're like little seals, and they have to have hair because that protects them. So this is called lanuga. Now, in a full-term fetus, you're running out of amniotic fluid, aren't they? And there's more rubbing that's happening, and this is why full-term babies aren't born looking so hairy. There's sometimes you see fetuses that are born as neonates, and they have a lot of this still on them. Who's seen that? Yeah, it's you're laughing about it. Did it freak you out? Is why you're laughing?
My daughter just like pulled back.
Just like you can own it. Yeah. So anyway, but that's that. And then children, you notice that children's hair is very different than adults, isn't it? The term. So children have what's called villus, and this is going to be in children. And some women keep that. Like I kept that. Like I don't have Like I kept that. Like there's no, you don't really see hair. It's just like, but it's there, but it's almost microscopic. These actually look, villi looks different than terminal hair under a microscope. So it actually has a slightly different appearance. So these are just different types. And then when we think about pigmented terminal hair, I think everybody knows, you know, so that's just pigmented terminal hair. Now, I don't ask you anything about like texture or color or anything. I don't ask you. This is just everything, and this is just absolutely for your information. So, but when we think about somebody who has straight hair, if we took a hair and did a transverse section, y'all know what that means, right? Straight across. So we've got this long hair and we do a transverse section and looked at it. People who have straight hair, that section would look very round. The rounder it would look, the straighter the hair appears. People who have, when they do a transverse section of wavy hair, the hair on the transverse section is very flattened. The more flattened, the curlier, right? So this is the difference in why some hair is curly and some hair is straight. It's just that as it's growing, and this is genetic, so this is going to be genetic information. Now, as far as color goes, as far as color is, when any color, it's the pigment, the melanin that you're producing. So the melanin of these follicles that are being produced. So if it is the dark, you know, melanin, then it's going to look darker. The hair is going to look darker. But then you also have like less and different colored melanin, and that's going to look like that. Red hair has a lot of iron in it. So that's got a ton of iron, and so it kind of looks like that. I'm not asking you any question about these. I just thought y'all might be interested. Okay. So, but then also gray hair. What happens with gray hair is that air gets into the hair shaft. And you can see there's no melanin picking up in here because of the hair that was in the air that was in the hair shaft. And so that can look white or grayish or whatever, it loses color. So that's all I kind of wanted, you know, that's just FYI. But let's look at the follicle. Let's look at the hair follicle because this is important. And what you need to know what a follicle is. The follicle is this, this encased structure that includes the root of the hair, and it's in case anything that's below the surface that's supporting this hair is the root of the hair is the hair follicle, okay? What's above the surface of the epidermis is called the shaft, the hair shaft, and you've probably heard that term. But anything below the surface, and we had said that which layer of the skin is this follicle found in? The dermis. Y'all see that? Now, I want you to note that for every hair in this follicle, there's blood supply. There's blood supply to this hair, and there's mitosis occurring down here in this root. And as those cells push upward, you see how these cells are pushing upward? Are they dying? Yeah, they're actually dying. So it doesn't hurt to have your hair cut, does it? Except maybe your feelings sometimes. But anyway, hopefully there's somebody good. But it can hurt your feelings. But no, it doesn't hurt because this is dead, compressed tissues here. So when we think about skin, we said the predominant cell in skin are what kind of cells? In the epidermis. Or what? They're keratinocytes, and they're producing keratin, which is a protein. The protein that's in hair is also keratin, but it's not exactly alike because its structure is slightly different. It's hard keratin. The keratin in skin is soft keratin, and it's just a difference in the organic molecule. But the keratin that's found in hair and nails is hard keratin. So, but this is dead, right? But here's the thing, these functions are really true. For every single hair follicle that you have a muscle that's attached to it. A muscle. This is called the piloerector muscle. Piloerector muscle. And most of them are vesicle, which means what? They don't function, no longer function. But many of them still do, and when they do function, and this muscle contracts, what happens? The goosebumps. We call them goosebumps, don't we? We call it goosebumps. But it also would stand the hair up. How many of you have ever had the feeling like the hair on the back of your neck stood up? Have you ever had that feeling? Yeah. And actually, is that a protective feeling? It actually is, isn't it? It is a protective feeling. So that serves kind of that function. But the goosebumps, do they serve a function? They can actually warm you up, can't they? They can warm you up because anytime a muscle contracts, what does it give off? Heat, in the form of heat. Yes, so it gives off heat. So it can do that. But we really don't have enough hair that we can actually raise our hairs and shake off water, do we? We don't really have enough hair we can do that. Not now. But anyway, that is what this little muscle is actually doing. You'll also notice that there's nerve supply to a hair. This is why somebody pulls your hair out. It hurts, doesn't it? It can hurt. So there's actual nerve supply to that. But here's what I want you to see as well. Continuous with the follicle is this flask, like in chemistry, a flask. There's this flask-like gland, called a sebaceous gland. And these glands are continuous with a hair follicle. This is how they release their products. This is the duct that they release their products into. And their products is sebum. And you all call sebum oil. And do you have to have enough oil to keep your skin healthy? You really do. So this oil, sebaceous glands are secreting sebum, which is oil. And this oil is going to move through this duct. And it's going to nourish, it's going to make supple, and it's going to keep healthy that epidermis, isn't it? At puberty, the sebaceous glands get a kick in the butt. Sebaceous glands get a big kick. We said that the hair changes at puberty too, doesn't it? The hair even changes at puberty from children to adults, so it becomes more of a terminal kind of hair, and this is all, again, due to hormones. And so as that happens, these sebaceous glands become more active. Can people have trouble with that? Yes. So we need the oil. Can't have too little, but can we have too much? Yes. We can, because what can happen is if there's too much production, the cells will start to slough off and will block this follicle, this duct. And once it gets blocked, it can set you up for the normal bacteria that's there, that's on everybody's skin. It's normal on everybody, but that bacteria can take advantage of that, and then it can cause what's called folliculitis. What is folliculitis? Do you think? Itis at the end of any word means what? Inflammation. Folliculitis means inflammation of what? The hair follicle. So ingrown hairs are really culprits in doing this, but also just excess oil production can do it too. It doesn't have to be an ingrown hair. What Erin just said was about an ingrown hair. People who have flattened hair shafts, their hair curls, doesn't it? And if that hair curls back down in and irritates any of this duct, if you will, and blocks it, can that lead to folliculitis? It really can. All right, so folliculitis can lead to boils, right? Y'all have heard of boils, carbuncles, whatever. So you know, we don't want that happening, but it can lead to that stuff. It can lead to acne, right? There are two different microbes that cause those two different things, but that's okay for y'all, just so you know that. Whatever. But in a normal situation, it's pumping oil, and as it should, because at puberty we need more of it. We do, and so that's going to be good. You'll also notice there's this little, almost like a little spiral-looking gland here that comes and empties here too. Some of these actually will empty straight to the top surface, but you can see this duct is entering right here, the follicle. These are sweat glands, and they're a very special kind of sweat glands. They only form at puberty. They're called apocrine sweat glands. They form at puberty. Have you ever wondered why all of a sudden the sweat of your the early teenager is smelling different than it had, right? And if you notice, they probably are getting axillary and pubic hair too at the same time. Those glands are releasing. They're different sweat glands, and it's really the action of the normal flora that's there that causes the difference in the odor that can happen. And that's not always always a bad thing. It's not, because some of those odors are subconscious that you're receiving, the ones that you aren't really detecting. You don't even detect them, these pheromones. And again, pheromones can let the opposite sex and even members of your own sex know that you are now sexually mature. Or capable, I should say. Okay.
Releases pheromones.
Pheromones. So these glands are also releasing pheromones. It's not just about the bacteria that end up producing some of the odor that you think about with when people get after puberty. So people will tend to, this is a very modern thing, but people will tend to use deodorants, won't they? And whatever at puberty, or introduce those at that time. But there are other scents that are being given off too that aren't even picked up consciously, and those are pheromones. Pheromones. And this is why I think I talked about it in here. When you are with a lot of ladies, a lot of women are in a group that's closely compact, that aren't on any sort of oral contraception, so nothing unnatural is happening. You'll all get on the same cycle, won't you?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that is?
To scare off.
I'm joking. No, they get frightened when women cycle together. You know what I mean? Like, so it was just a joke.
Okay. But actually, you do. It's not like your bodies do that because of the pheromones you're receiving from each other, and your bodies really will do that. It's called herd, reproduction. It's kind of will do that. And then men who are in close contact with women will typically their testosterone levels will go up. So these are all because of pheromones. And it might not be that they have any real attraction to anything. It's just a natural event that happens. So anyway, so maybe our hair follicle is more important than we might have thought, right? But anyway, so this is a hair follicle. Do you have any questions for me? The piloerector muscle, sebaceous glands secrete sebum, which is oil. These apocrine sweat glands secrete sweat. And we have American sweat glands too that go straight to the surface, and children have those too. I love this electron scanning graph here, where you can scanning the corneum, the stratum corneum, that most superficial dead layer, as the hair is moving through that corneum. You see how the hair shaft, right? You can see that. It's kind of cool looking, isn't it, to see it at that level? So anyway, do you have any questions for me? All right. Again, this is FYI about how hair cycles. We are creating new hair follicles, and some are dying at any given time. And depending on your, and this is based on heredity too, some people go through really long cycles, so they can easily grow really long hair. Other people, cycle quicker than that, and that doesn't happen for them. But anyway, that's just FYI for that. I do want you to know this word. It's called alopecia. Alopecia means balding. Now, some alopecia is absolutely normal. We expect it because it can be genetic and it's hormonal. So y'all have heard of male pattern baldness, right? Haven't you? So actually, when that is happening, it's dominant in males. And what is happening is they have a lot of testosterone. So ladies, you want a really virulent man? Find you a bald one, right? So anyway, he's probably going to have a lot of hair on his chest and back, but not too much on his head. That's okay. High testosterone levels. Just joking. I know I'm joking, but that's kind of true. But anyway, so alopecia. Now, sometimes alopecia can be a problem. It can be an autoimmune disease, and people can have, and this can be male or female, but people can go into autoimmune diseases where their immune systems are attacking their hair follicles. And when that happens, it can be sometimes localized. And I point right here because I had a student. She was in one of my night classes, and she actually started it before my class started. She had started losing like a dime size, but by the end of the semester, she had the size this big. She lost. So she was going to Duke. And they diagnosed it as they did a little biopsy, diagnosed it as autoimmune alopecia, and it's usually localized. And it went into remission because I saw her a year or so after the class, and it had grown back, But anyway, they can treat with immunosuppressive drugs locally and try to do that. But some people have it systemically, so they're losing their hair, like eyebrows, eyelashes, hair from the whole body, right? So, so there can be different reasons, and sometimes with alopecia, if it's not like an obvious male pattern baldness thing, then you want to figure out what's going on, don't you?
So if they lose hair, like anywhere on your body or whatever, does that make the piloerectal muscles, is that, did I say that wrong?
No, you said that right, piloerector muscles. I have never, such an interesting question. I have never asked or thought about what would happen to that little muscle. Most of those muscles don't work anyway. They're there, but they're not working anyway. I have never asked about that. I have no idea what the answer to that is. It's really interesting. I don't know. And I guess it would be take a histology biopsy to see really what was going on with those. But that is an interesting question. I don't know. So alopecia just means balding. Some people are born, and I'm sure y'all have seen this, where some people are born with no hair, right? And that means no hair. The eyelashes, eyebrows, hair, never going to be hair on my head. But that's really rare, isn't it? So alopecia that we typically think of is just whatever. Can stress affect hair follicle cycles? Can nutrition affect hair follicle cycles? Yeah, all of this. There's a ton of things that can affect those cycles. So we do know that. Hirsutism. Hirsutism is having excessive hairiness, right? And this is also a hormone imbalance of the adrenal glands. So I don't know. Have y'all all seen? I did not name them this. This is what they call themselves. But there have been documentaries on families, because this does tend to run in families, so it's inherited. Hirsutism, where they have called themselves wolf people. Yeah. Okay, I didn't know why they called themselves that, because that's almost like you know what I'm saying? But anyway, they were calling themselves that, and they had been offered. I saw a documentary on this where they had been offered by some dermatologists and some centers that to do permanent hair removal, laser removal, which is expensive, isn't it? And it takes more than one treatment, so you have to really it's time, it's money, it's expensive to do permanent hair removal. So they had been offered that, but they had chosen not to do it. And these people had truly had hair growing that long enough and thick enough to comb and covered everything. Nothing on the face was showing except for the eyes, the nares, and the mouth. And so they really had a ton of hair. And I sort of love that they embraced that. Whatever. I thought that was great. That's who they were. That's their family. That was their identity. I thought that was great that they were happy with that. Really. It's a very, we as a society go through very different little things as far as like what's accepted in culture, as far as hair removal goes, right? So I have had friends who I know that in France, in European countries, women don't shave their legs and underarms. And I've had American friends who are so judgmental over that, which is really, should we be judgmental if somebody doesn't want to shave under their leg? I mean, what was the first woman that shaved underarms and legs? Like, what were they thinking? Right? So, I mean, what were they thinking? Why did they do that? Do you wonder that? No, I mean, seriously, do you wonder that? What'd you say? Really, who started that? And then you also have to think that there's other, what do they call it? They call it, I know for men, they call it manscaping. But right? Is that right? See, guys, I know a few things. So anyway, and women this has happened too. It's very recent in human history that this has happened. But it's really thought to have happened and been continued because of the porn industry, which is not maybe the greatest of reasons to follow along. You know what I mean? But that's what, if you look at the history of that. So I don't know. Couldn't we just go back and smack that first woman who shaved under her arms and her legs? Oh, what's wrong with that? So, but that didn't. Not really. Wouldn't want to be violent against anyone ever. I was just I was joking there. But I remember having friends at college who meeting friends in college from other countries, people who didn't have that as part of their culture, to do these shaving things. And they were so offended by it that people wouldn't do that. And I thought, well, why are we doing it? I think we need to stop. We're the ones that are in the wrong here. Let's just all stop. Let's just all agree to stop shaving our legs. Whatever. It doesn't matter. So these are the body hair things. And so we do see that the function of eyelashes, right? Eyelashes is keeping things out of your eyes, which are vital to survival. Your sight is. So obviously very important function for that. The hair in your nose, is that important?
Yes.
Yes, it is. And so we do see that they do have some of these, and certainly eyebrows, they talk about expressions. So I'm going to just talk about nails and then we'll stop here. I think it's enough for today. We said this is hard keratin, isn't it? So it looks even a little bit slightly different from hair, and that's why the appearance looks different. And I don't really talk too much about this except that nails are to protect the very sensitive tips of fingers and toes. Our nerve endings, our peripheral nerve endings are make it so the tips of our fingers and toes are incredibly, we call it being tactile. So we have a lot of them there, and it protects them. It is very likely that, you know, if humans get to stay on the planet long enough, we'll probably lose our nails and our fingernails and toenails because they've changed a lot. Do we actually use them as much as maybe our ancestors did? No. And so, because now we've got people who have but they're changing. They're changing in their looks. But anyway, and that's evidence through looking at early man. So anyway, the nail, that's what its function is, though, is to do that. And this truly is the last slide that we'll do. Sweat glands, did I say they cool us off? And we have them even as children, but then we get even more of them at puberty, don't we? And they're slightly different, aren't they? And then we have sebaceous glands that secrete what? Oil, sebum, which is oil. We have mammary glands. What do you think they secrete? Milk. And then we have ceruminous. I want you to just jot down here. Ceruminous are wax, earwax. So an earwax has a function. It's to keep pests out of your ear canal. And that's really true. It does that. It also waterproofs your ear canal and keeps that eardrum really, really flexible. So earwax, ceruminous glands secrete earwax, which has a ton of different functions. Have y'all ever heard of how many spiders a person usually swallows a year in their sleep? It just makes you want to stay awake. But anyway, not really. But you do, because insects are all around, aren't they? And at night they'll crawl into crevices. So anyway, they'll crawl into your ears, and so this earwax keeps them out. It can repel them, but also keeping that ear canal waterproof. Because water that we bathe in and that we drink is not sterile water. So there's microbes that we bathe in showers and stuff. And so if that water can sit in our ear canal, it could cause infections. But that earwax keeps them waterproof, keeps pests out, and keeps that eardrum really nice and soft and flexible. Okay, ceruminous glands. Are we good? Do we have some notes? We have some notes. A lot of that, I felt like as I was going through that I was even sensing it was just a lot of terminology, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So that just kind of takes time, doesn't it? All right, so those of you who aren't here, I'm thinking about you. Hope you're getting to listen to this, and I'm hoping that it works. Okay, see you next week.